Hello, everyone. Welcome. Before we start, we would, of course, like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we live, create, and learn on today, paying respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Kicking off with a few minor tech issues here, but we should be all good because we've got the wonderful Demas Rusli with us today, back for part 2. How are you doing today, Demas?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Thank you for having me on again.
Of course. I'm good as well. Just holding down the fort. We do have Flynn with us in the chat a little bit today, so that is comforting to have a mod. But let's get into it. Quick recap. In your previous session, it was all about sort of the one-on-one of shooting photography at night, whether that is on your phone or on a camera.
Yep.
And so today we're going to delve even deeper and actually go through step by step the process of creating a photograph that you've shot at night. So without further ado, do you want to jump right in?
Yeah, let's do it. So I wanted to talk today about photo stacking, or like long exposure stacking specifically. So the reason why we want to do this is because most cameras, I mean, you can shoot longer exposures than 30 seconds. You can do like something called bulb, which means that you can do a long exposure forever, as long as you keep your finger on the shutter. But limit wise, usually it's 30 seconds or maybe 15 seconds, or, for example. And to control your settings as well, 30 seconds is usually like a good amount of time. You want to open up your shutter so that you can allow the light in and control all the other settings so it's not blown out white. And when you shoot 30 seconds, you're probably only gonna get a trail that's about like maybe a little bit, not as long as these, so shorter. Depending on the speed of the boats, depending on what you're shooting. Of course, if you're shooting cars, they're gonna go a lot faster, but you might not get the position of all the cars where you want them, for example, as well. So these are just, I'm going to just skip through some examples of when I use this technique. So for example, when it's like cars, like this, for example, you can see that there's like a trail in every lane. And so when I'm taking a photo, it's not going to be necessarily a car on every lane, like a trail on every lane. So you take lots of long exposures to shoot all the different lanes, and then in Photoshop we can stack them all together to create an image that looks like there's cars in every lane. So again, this is another example of long exposure stacking, where I got my friend to draw using a light stick, just random curves, and each color is one photo. So I stacked a blue one, a red one, a purple one, a green one, like all into one to create like some sort of abstract artwork that he's drawn using a light. So it's not, the original photos don't look like this. It's just when you stack them all together, they create this effect. And there's two other kind of creative ways as well that you might also want to use stacking. So this is basically a shot of the Hong Kong skyline, two photos. So the first photo is just a clean shot of it, and the second photo is a long exposure, but as I'm doing the long exposure, I'm zooming in at the same time using the zoom ring of the camera. So when it's,
that's a manual zoom, right?
Yes, it's within like the camera.
Gotcha.
While I'm there, yeah. So when you do a 10-second long exposure, for example, if you zoom while you do it, you create these like lines converging because the camera is zooming. And so because you're shooting on a tripod, these two photos should line up. The clean photo and the zoom photo should line up. And then you can create like, see how like all these billboards are like, all the lines are pointing to all the billboards because it's like the brightest parts of the image. And then what I did was I just used like a layer mask in Photoshop to clear out the middle bit so that it's like the middle building, it's all converging to the middle building. So that's the effect how I created this. And then the last effect for stacking is creating double exposures in a way. So this is a photo of my friend standing in front of like a bunch of red lights, but then I stacked another photo on top to make it look to have like a double exposure effect. So this technique can be applied many different ways, but today we are going to talk about this one specifically because I guess it's like, I feel like it's the most basic because you're shooting on a tripod and every photo should line up exactly where you want it. And all you have to do is just stack, stack, stack and get rid or keep the parts that you want in terms of what boat trails you want. Or if you don't want a trail over there, you can get rid of it. And you can keep a clean looking opera house as well. I'll show you guys how to do that as well. So maybe we can jump into Lightroom and go from there.
Yeah, you get set up into Lightroom. I'm just going to give a shout out to our pals in the chat. Welcome, welcome. Of course, if you have any questions about what we're doing today or just want to, say wow for like the 50th time because these photos are incredible, feel free to do that either in the YouTube chat or the Behance chat. We'll do our best to grab all your questions and compliments and get to as many of them as we can and as we're going along. But that's enough from me. I'm just gonna sit here and be in awe. So take it away.
So the photos that we are going to be editing come from like a time-lapse series. So that I would literally just put my camera down on a ledge and set it to shoot every 31 seconds with a 30-second shutter speed. So it was literally shooting with a 1 second gap in between and nonstop for an hour.
Oh, wow.
So I picked like maybe 20 images from the set to just show like 20 images. They're not like, it's two sequences. So from 1 to 14 here down at the bottom is one sort of, it's consecutive. And then from like 16 to 22 is also 6 or 7 consecutive images as well. But I just tried to pick images with the longest trails, and because they're consecutive, they should also join when you stack.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to start by editing one of the photos first. So I'll just pick this one to begin with because it's got a long trail and it's got like all the other scenes that I want to edit as well. Like as in, it's not like the sky here. Like I don't really like the converging lights up here. So I didn't want to edit that one. I just picked the generic one with a long trail that once I get the colors right, I can just copy and paste the edit onto all the other. So just going through the Lightroom process quickly, I always just start by doing a lens correction at the top and then fixing up the horizon here. It's a little bit slanted. So to do that, I just go to the crop and then there's my camera is like in front of the settings, but it's all right. I can still see.
Got to maneuver around a little bit.
So here in the angle, you can click the straighten tool and then you can draw a line where you think the horizon should be. I think that's about right. And then it kind of straightens the image for you. Maybe a little bit less, but you can also do that manually. So you can just like grab it and rotate.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting you to do, but that's a whole new trick.
Yeah, so if you have a photo that you know the horizon lines, because this is a bit like ambiguous because you don't really know exactly where the horizon. If you have like a straight horizon, you can do that and it'll straighten your photo straight away. Then you can also, just to play with composition if you really want to, use O on the keyboard to like make sure that the composition of your photo is good.
Oh, wow.
For this, I think the center line and keeping the opera house in the center might be nice. So something like this, double click if you're done. And then you just start color grading. So once you get the composition right, just go through each slider one at a time, which I'm going to be doing now. For me personally, color grading is a very subjective thing. So if you prefer it to be like warmer tone, you can do that. But for me personally, I like it to be on the cooler side because at night I feel cold, so I want to feel that way when I look at and when I edit my photos.
I thought it was because you're such a cool guy.
I think I like blues as well, like color wise. So so that's how I tend to like to edit my photos. Bluish, purple, reds are usually what I like to go for when I'm editing my photos. And then it's a little bit blown out, like these highlights, so you can like bring some of the highlights down to bring some of that detail. Push up the contrast a little bit to make the image pop a little bit more. And then just like this is my whole editing process. I just literally
just like
go through one
to the other.
one slider to the other, and I go like left, oh I don't like that, I go right, and then like just try to keep going until you find the right balance and until you feel like the image looks good to you, because everyone has different tastes, right? So everyone has their own unique way of looking at things and their own preferences in terms of colors and tones and everything. So the more you do it, the more you'll learn what you like. So like
absolutely,
at first you might not know what you like, but if you see a photo that you like from another photographer, for example, you can try to use Lightroom to emulate their edit or try to copy their style in a way. So once you start doing that, you start to realize how things get edited, and then you can also then figure out if you like it or not, or if you can find your own style branching off someone else's. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of how I went about it when I first started.
Yeah, basically doing like a photo edit study, much like you would do illustration or a drawing study in general. It's a really good tip. I also have to give a shout out to Benjamin Lee Ichban in the chat. Hello. Welcome. And we do actually have our first question from the chat. From the wonderful Flynn. So the question is, do you prefer Lightroom or Lightroom Classic?
For me, I prefer Lightroom Classic because I always, like, if I'm traveling and everything, I always have my laptop with me. So I think the main advantage of Lightroom, just normal Lightroom, is that everything's on the cloud and you can access your photos on your phone, your tablet, everywhere you go. But because I'm always with my laptop, I don't really use that functionality. So I'm also probably more used to Lightroom Classic because it's the more old school program. It's been there longer. The new Lightroom is a newer one, and so it's like all cloud-based. And also the good thing about Lightroom is that it's all like it organizes my images. So if I go here in the library tab, for example, see that like all my folders are organized, and like I can go to any photo, like I can find any photo anytime, and it's fast for me. Whereas normal Lightroom, it's all just like a catalog of like all the images.
Right, so, I see.
Yeah, it's not as organized in my opinion.
There we go. Good to know.
So here I am just increasing the like saturation of the blues because, like I said earlier, I like to have my night photos more blue. So that's sort of what I'm doing at the moment with the sliders here, the colors.
Fantastic. We got Tom in chat. Hello from Adelaide. There we go. We're tuning in all the way from Sydney, so hello. They're actually going to Sydney in just over a month's time.
Awesome.
And I was wondering, just real quick, I'm kind of asking a question on their behalf. Do you have any like top locations to check out from a photographer's perspective here in Sydney?
Like in general or at night?
At night. Let's go for nighttime.
Anywhere around the Opera House. Like for me, I think the Opera House is like the center.
Epicenter.
Epicenter of Sydney, and like it kind of ties the whole city together, in my opinion.
Mm.
So when I was doing a lot of night photography at the beginning, I was looking for a lot of like vantage points of the opera house, so different areas like where you don't expect to see the opera house as well. Like for example, like the back streets of Kirribilli or the back streets of Milson's Point, where like the opera house is like at the end of an alleyway, like across the harbour. So I always try to look for different ways to frame the opera house as well. So that's a good starting point in terms of like night photography locations. Where else? There's like Chinatown a little bit. Barangaroo area also is not bad for night photography. There's like some cool buildings and cool footbridges as well. But yeah, just around the city, wherever you can find lights.
That's great tip. Find the lights and you'll find the photo.
A big thing in when I'm editing is this slider here, actually, the hue slider for the blue. So if I cancel that, it's a little bit more purple, and also the purple one as well. But if I slide it a little bit to the left, it kind of makes the photo a little bit more aqua, which I prefer. It kind of makes it less blue purple, but I always push that one a bit to the left, and also the purple a little bit towards the blue. So it makes the image more like the blue's brighter, I guess.
So you prefer your blues to be green and your purples to be blue?
A little bit, but not too green. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. Then there's these color grading wheels that you can just play around to see where you want first your midtones to be. So you can just push it like your midtone to be green, for example. That's a bit too much. So I always just try to keep it around the center dot. I kind of like that. And then you can adjust the brightness of your midtones. Then again, you can do the shadows. So here, I think I prefer my shadows a little bit more blue, and then maybe a bit darker to bring the boat trails out a bit more. Then the highlights, maybe a little bit pinky red.
Ooh, nice.
But it's very slight, like it's very subtle. Like you can't really tell. I don't know if people can tell in the stream or not because of the resolution of the screen or whatnot. But hopefully you can see something.
Yeah, let us know in chat if you can tell any difference from what we've done so far.
And the last thing is sharpening. I just kind of sharpen it a little bit, add a bit of detail and a little bit of masking. But you can also see what I'm doing here in this. You can see the sharpness of the photo from this little
little like
panel.
preview zoom in window.
And because I shot it at ISO 100, there's only going to should be only a little bit of noise, do a little very minor noise reduction. But that's about it. Like that's sort of where I would probably stop with the first level of editing of this first photo. If you can see here, this is the before. Ooh. Where is the before? It's gray. Ooh. Not really sure.
There we go.
Sort of.
Close enough.
Yeah, I think it's because I did like a virtual copy of another file, so it was showing the other edit, but it's fine.
I see.
Yeah.
With this, do you have like a general, whether it's like a filter or a preset that you sort of use as a first pass in all your night photography, or do you always do a custom for each photo?
I personally like to do custom for each photo. But I mean, if I do this, right, and then I really like this edit, I can create a preset and then use it for other night photos. But for me, I just feel like every photo is different, and like you can use it as a base, but I don't, maybe it's like psychological in my head. It's like, oh, it already looks different. And so when I press this other button as a preset, it kind of pushes a bit too far. Now I have to figure out what I have to bring back and kind of like, you know what I mean?
See. Yeah, that makes sense.
So then I've actually created, it's not like it's not like the presets that will like completely change your images like, you know, crazy. But this here, this preset tab on the left, if you go to subject urban architecture, they're actually my filters that I've made for Lightroom. Like, so it's on every Lightroom out there, classic and normal. So all these filters here, UA01, 02, etc., are filters that I've made for Lightroom, for Adobe. It doesn't say my name, but that's a fun fact.
That is a very fun fact.
But yeah, so if I do find like a photo that suits it perfectly, great. If not, just start from scratch. So yeah, so here's the edit we're at right now. So what we're going to do is copy it. So we're going to check all. So we're going to copy everything, and then copy, and then select all the other images here, and then right click, develop settings, and then paste settings. So it should paste to these first 7 and paste again to the next 7.
And if you happen to accidentally select the one that you just did, will it reapply those same adjustments? Or will it just, you know, stay as is?
Like it should. It should apply to all everything. So I'm just gonna apply it to all these photos, which let me see. Develop settings, paste settings. So now everything is applied to as I need it to apply to.
Nice. That's so great that you can just copy paste.
One. And then, okay, so now I guess would be the fun part is when we open up Photoshop. So we're going to go right click, edit in, and then edit in Adobe Photoshop. So it should just automatically open Photoshop up by itself. Might take a bit of time because it's a big file, but we'll go from there. Just wait a bit.
Excellent. Yeah. Bearing in mind, everyone, these are massive raw files. So if there is any lag, do let us know and we'll see if we can do anything live to improve it. But in the meantime, also hello to Bruce and Gareth. Welcome to the stream. If anyone else has just tuned in, feel free to ask any questions that you might have for Demas today about the work that we're doing right now or his work in general, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, so they are big files. So way I might get around this is but every time I open a new one, it's going to be a full res. But I just copy it and downsize it. So it should be fine.
Awesome, yeah, because we are getting a little bit of that expected lag, but we will power through it.
So yeah, so like I said, I'm just gonna change the image size so it's like massive. So I'm just gonna make it like 4,000 or something, way less to begin with, so that we.
And what image size do you usually, I guess, export and output to?
I output to JPEG, but I usually just keep it as big as possible. Like I just let the app compress it for me. I don't really do too much to it. Yeah, I just export at 100% and then upload to whatever I need. But at the same time, like for stories or something, I export down to 1080 by 1920. Like I just keep it at the native screen resolution.
Yeah.
So we've got one open. So the next thing we're going to do is try to join that with another one. So let's say the next image. So it should have this next trail here coming. Yeah, so I'm going to open this one, which is the next one. So also same thing, edit in Adobe Photoshop.
And is there possibly an action that you could record and implement to, you know, import them or move them over to Photoshop and change the size?
I think so. Like photos in Photoshop like that. So that I definitely think you can. But I think the purpose of this stream, this is probably the easiest way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, no, definitely.
Control or Command A to select the second photo, the whole thing, and then Control or Command C to copy, and then we're gonna paste it into the next one. So because it's too big, I'm gonna free transform and make it small. Just make it the same size as the one we've already made it smaller.
And while you do that, we have another question from Bruce. Have you tried the Lightroom camera on mobile? Curious what your thoughts are.
I've only had a play of it a little bit. I haven't had too much of a play with the Lightroom camera on mobile, but I know for sure you can shoot RAW on it. And yeah, we discussed this I think on Tuesday. So like if your phone doesn't have RAW capabilities, you can use the Lightroom mobile app to shoot RAW on your photos, and then you can edit it straight away in Lightroom. I'm not sure if it allows the capabilities of other manual settings or not, but the RAW capability is also already very good. So
yeah,
if you need RAW files, you can use the Lightroom camera. So now we have two images, right? So this one and this one. So if I turn it on and off, so there's two layers here, layer 0, layer 1. So to stack it, all you have to do is change this blending mode from normal to lighten.
There we go.
And you can see that this trail here has now extended even further to here. So like it's, this is the before and then this is the after. So you can see like this trail here has gotten a lot longer. And also this trail here has continued because it's just the next photo in the time lapse. So
I'm curious here because my assumption was that you were gonna create a mask on the upper layer and then just erase out what you didn't want. Is there like a key difference or massive benefit with just changing the blending mode versus doing a mask?
So you can do both. So like what lighten does is just bring out whatever's bright in the image, I think, or like white or light in the image. So it brings that out and adds to it, right? So if I want to, let's say I don't want this end of this trail, I can add a layer mask, which is this button down here. Then you can get a black paintbrush and make your size a little bit smaller. Then you can just like, you can literally paint out, like, I don't want this trail anymore. So I can paint that out, right? But you can keep all the other trails still there.
Excellent. So it's kind of a combination of both techniques.
It is. So if you were to do it the other way, I can show you. So if I just do, I'll delete this layer mask, and then I will go back to normal, and I just start getting rid of the front bit. You can do that, but I think it's just much quicker to just change it from lighten. And I think it doesn't blend it as nice because you can see like here, you can see the join now. Like it's much more harder to mask that up. And like for example here, where is it? It's like a little bit more cumbersome because you don't know what you're getting rid of and whatnot. So I think the quickest way is to change it to lighten and then remove the parts you don't want.
Nice. That's great.
So I might just do one more image or maybe two, for example, and then I'll show you the like final layers that I did.
Yeah, something we prepared earlier.
I'll just pick one where it's not part of the sequence. So this is another one that's not part of the sequence. So I'll open this as well in Photoshop. So it's actually like very easy. As long as your photos are stacked on top of each other and aligned because of a tripod, because you use the tripod. All you have to do is just open them up. As long as they're on top of each other in the layers, you can just change them to lighten blending, and then it should stack it all together.
Super easy. While you're importing and resizing that photo, I think the stream will probably only handle this one additional photo. I don't know if we want to push it any further. So we do actually have a question that I can slot in here while we wait. And that is, what camera are these shots taken with?
So these photos are taken on a Sony A7R4, and that's why they're so massive. They're like 61 megapixel photos. So they're big. So now that everything's in one file, it should be okay now. It's better.
It's calmed down.
Yeah. If you open a new file in Photoshop, it just goes a bit crazy. So now we've got 3 layers here. You can also, again, do lighten, right? So now it's starting to populate a lot more. And like as a pattern here, you can just keep going until it stacks like crazy, right? Like until it's overkill. And as you can see here, the more you stack the lighten, the more the detail of the Opera House goes away, because it's just stacking lots of light parts on top of each other. And so the way to bring that back is you can so for example, out of all 3 layers, I like the colors of this Opera House the best, as an example, right? So which is this layer here, layer 0. So all you can do is just select that, just the Opera House bit. Then you right click, layer via copy. So now you can see it's very tiny, but there's only the Opera House on this layer. There's only the Opera House on this layer. So all you have to do is drag it all the way to the top, and then you should get a clean Opera House. So this is the before, this is the after, but you can also see a box around it. And now you can remove that box by adding a layer mask. So clicking here. For those of you that don't know what a layer mask is, it's basically a way to hide or show parts of a layer. So if you paint black on this layer mask, which is this white box here, you will hide everything. So I'm just gonna let me just paint black on everything. So I'm painting black on the whole thing. So now the Opera House is back to the super bright one.
And do you mind zooming in just a little bit for people watching on a smaller screen?
So I'll undo that. So that's the Opera House, the one that we want. But if I paint black all over it, that's getting rid of it on this layer mask. But if I paint white, and by white, all you have to do is click X on the keyboard to toggle between foreground and background colors. So I'm just tapping X on the keyboard. So now the paintbrush is white. You can just bring back the Opera House now. So the reason why you want to do this, and also see here, it's like very sharp, very blunt. There's a box on the bottom left. You can paint. You can paint black again for there. Where is it? Paintbrush. Change the size of the brush to something a bit smaller. You can paint black here to just remove that box, to make it smoother. So there's like here, for example, you can just make it smoother, because I'm painting with hardness 0. So there's no hardness on my brush. So it's very soft. So here, just basically removing all the hard edges of the box that I created using this Opera House. But like you can see, the benefit of using a layer mask is that you can just keep painting black and white to hide and show it. So it's like non-destructive. So it's basically you can keep editing, keep painting black and white until you get the right result you want. And this is the before and after, right? So you can see that the Opera House is more detailed in this one, and then this is a bit bright. And
a bit too overexposed.
Yeah, and if I see how like on the here, I'm getting rid of details of these red dots and like this boat here. You can also keep bringing that back by painting white or black, by painting black. So yeah, you can start bringing that back. You can paint this back in as well. So you can keep all but like just basically keep this part of the sail where you want it to be.
Excellent.
So that's about where it is. And then for Instagram, I would crop it 4:5. So I would get the crop tool, change the size here to 4:5, and then maybe crop. So this is about where the crop was for the image I posted on Instagram, or what I showed at the beginning of this stream. And yeah, so that's sort of where it's at. And then you can keep adding, but I wouldn't crop until the end. So I would just keep adding, keep stacking until I need to crop, until I'm ready, until the composition is done, and then I crop at the end.
Amazing. It's both like incredible, like it's both surprising and not surprising at all that it is so simple to do. But I think it's only so simple because someone else, like, you've discovered it and you've sort of condensed it in like, okay, it's 3 steps. That's all you need to do. But I can imagine in, earlier iterations of these programs, or for people who don't know exactly how to do it, that it can come across as really intimidating. So it's great that, you've simplified the process for us. So thank you very much.
So this is the final image, right? This is the like what I prepared earlier kind of thing.
Ooh, yeah.
But originally, I went overboard with this, and so I had to ask, like, I sent it to Ben. I sent it to Ben. I asked my wife, like, what they think of it. So it's good to also get like peer review on your work. So before, if I turn all these layers on, look how like there's like 20 layers here. If I turn all these layers on, you'll see like how overboard I went with all these layers. So he just got a bit crazy. So just like too much.
A bit too much, maybe. Yeah.
So it's good to like, when you're editing and you edit something for long enough, you kind of get blinded by like, oh, is it good or is it not? You're just in that flow of editing. So it's good to ask around, ask your friends, ask your family members what they think of it. And yeah, get opinions of others. So that's what happened. And that's how much stacking I did to create this edit. And you can see that a lot of them have layer masks on it. So I've just clicked this layer mask button and basically painted. So if I disable this one, for example, what shows up? So more trails at the back here shows up. So I didn't want that, so I just removed it from the back. You can see there. For example, here,
it's great.
I didn't want more of these trails. So this was like distracting here on the right, here. So I got rid of that in this layer mask. So that's the beauty of layer masks. So you can pick and choose what you want to show in each layer.
And also just so great that it is non-destructive. So if you change your mind, like, oh no, I did want that lamp or that person standing there, you can always just color them back in, which is great.
Exactly. So so that's the whole process of stacking photos. It's very easy. You just, if you've taken everything on a tripod and it's like long exposure trails at night, when the photo is dark and there's this, like, the differences are just the lights, you can just open them all up on top of each other on different layers and then change the layers to lighten, and then it should all stack together.
Fantastic. And just reiterating for Bruce as well, who was just wondering, what would one have to do to actually take light trails like this? I've never had the opportunity to do so yet. So in the camera, and that's just taking long exposure photos, right?
Yes. So to take a long exposure photo, you want to set your camera shutter speed to. So the settings for this was 30 seconds, f5.6, and ISO 100. So you want to. For me, the most important was the 30 seconds. So I set the shutter speed to 30 seconds. Then I wanted it to be as clean as possible. So I set my ISO as low as possible. So that's why the ISO was 100. And then it gave me a resulting aperture of f5.6. So that's the settings and how I went about shooting this. And then so if you keep taking 30-second images one after another, then you will capture these boat trails and in sequence, and you can make the boat trails as long as you want in Photoshop. We're using that lighten blending mode.
Excellent. Kind of like stop motion, but it's just all in the one photo.
Yeah.
To sort of very much simplify it.
Exactly.
Awesome. And just out of curiosity, and pardon the squeaking of the chair, but how long do you usually sort of keep these time lapses running for? Is an hour generally the standard, or does it really depend on what you are photographing?
It depends. Like if it's like the same thing, like if it, let's say traffic, right, on a highway, right, you know that it's going to be the same trails of cars. You may only need to shoot like 10-15 minutes of it, as long as there's enough cars. Then you can keep looping the video and people will just think it's non-stop. Whereas on the other hand, if it's something like stars or something, then you can't just go stars a little bit and then stop. Sometimes stars take like 3 or 4 hours, because then you want the whole sky to move. So that's it just really depends on what you're shooting. This took me an hour and a half, because I felt that I captured enough boats at the time. But yeah, it's just assessing the situation and assessing what you're shooting.
What would you say is the longest that you've been out capturing your time lapse?
Well, there was a time in America where luckily the balcony of our hotel, it was in Monument Valley in Arizona. The balcony of our hotel gave a view of the Monument Valley, and it was so dark. We literally just like let the camera run until the battery ran out and just went to bed. So I think it went for like 3 or 4 hours, and it just kept shooting. And then in the morning we checked, and hopefully the photos come out good.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's a kind of a callback to old film photography, where you take the photo and you won't know till much later if it actually turned out all right.
Yeah, you just luckily in digital you can just like in the morning take out the SD card and then put it in the computer and then see how it turns out.
Hope for the best.
Luckily it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, and speaking of time, we do have a little under 15 minutes to go.
I wanted to
you
show
did show
something
me
else.
some other pieces.
Yeah.
Let's show off some more photo stacked images.
Another technique I wanted to show is like how to create reflections. This is also very easy, so it shouldn't take long to do. So I took this image in Vivid this year, and
amazing.
So the idea is to create a reflection, so it like mimics a water puddle, for example, like this one. And so what I want to do is again open. I've already edited the colors of this one, so I'm not going to. So basically, again, it's the same Lightroom process. Just so same Lightroom process here, where I've tweaked every single slide. I already edited a little bit in Photoshop to get rid of like distraction in the background, but now it's the next step of how to create this reflection. So again, I'm gonna edit in Photoshop, and then open that, and it's gonna hopefully not take too long. Pretty fast, that one.
Oh, there we go.
Then all we have to do is we got this layer 0. Then grab the rectangular marquee tool, which is this one here, and then select the top part where the subject is, and go to about her feet, and then right click and then layer via copy. So now we have that layer up there, just above it. Then right click that, free transform, flip vertical. So you're now flipping that part, and then literally holding shift and control so it moves down in a straight line, put it right under her feet. So now there is a reflection, but it's a bit too harsh and it's too low. So I'm gonna select everything and then free transform that and just move it up for now. You can also, if you want to do it more accurately, you can go view guides and then create new guide layout, and you can do like a 3x3 grid. Oh wow, that landed perfectly on the bottom third. But yeah, you can see
years of
that
experience
you can
to
see
get to this point.
you can see that, like for me, if it, like rule of thirds, I like to follow it a little bit by, you know, keeping the point of interest or the lines or the reflection lines at the bottom third here. Then if you're done with the guide, you can do control semicolon, or you can go view clear guides. Same. Then to make it more realistic, you can change the blending mode to screen. So now you can see that it shows a little bit more of the background underneath. But because we have created this, we can stretch the bottom so that it's not as black. So you can just grab this part here, go to the bottom layer via copy, and then I'm just going to stretch it. It's not going to be too... obviously, that looks very strange. But you can change the perspective of it as well by right-clicking perspective, pull the corner so that the line is... It's gonna obviously make your photos pixelated, but because you're covering it with a reflection, it's okay.
And also covering it with a much higher res image as well.
Yes, exactly. So now you have that, as long as the two lines here are converging and it's the right perspective, bring that layer on top back again. And then you can also change the opacity of it. For example, you can change the opacity of it to like 50%. So it's not as super bright. And then again, you can do a layer mask as well. So add a layer mask, then we can start painting black to the parts where we shouldn't see a reflection, which is like on the actual artwork here at the top. So start painting a little bit, bringing the actual foreground, the actual artwork back up, and making it like a softer. You can see, make it have the ground show up a little bit more around the artwork. And then if you really want to go a little bit more, you can make the reflection have a blur, so it's not as sharp. So you can go filter, blur, Gaussian blur.
Ah, yes, the classic.
And then change it to whatever level of blur you think this puddle has. So maybe 5 or 7.5 or something. I reckon 5 was good. Let's do 5. So now you get this reflected image of a puddle. Maybe 50 is a little bit too less. Maybe you can go a bit more in terms of opacity to bring out that puddle even more.
Wow. And in just such few and simple steps, that is amazing. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people flipping and twisting and rotating their images over the weekend, just trying out this technique.
The good thing
about, I would say, just at 5 minutes left.
One last thing is that the good thing about using Lightroom and Photoshop together is that once you finish an edit in Photoshop, you can just click save. So like file save. And then once the image saves, this one's going to take a little bit of time. It should just literally, whatever you've edited, it should create like a new file in Lightroom. And then you can color grade it a second time or change the colors again as you wish. Because when you edit something in Photoshop, your perception of the image changes. So like the first edit doesn't seem like it's correct or something, sometimes. So now if I exit Photoshop and go back to Lightroom, we have the image here edited. And for example, you can just do another Lightroom color grade. So if I wanted to add a vignette, for example, to bring the subject, the eye more towards the subject, you can do that at the end step, the final step. So here, right, you can like add this vignette to draw the eye more to the center, for example, or if you want to add more contrast to it or brighten, whatever you want to do, you can do that again after you finish your Photoshop step.
Amazing. We do have a question that's related again to lighting, which is definitely the key theme these streams. How did you get that amazing lighting behind the girl?
Was that question asked by Ben?
Might have been.
So if you see in the original photo here, if I zoom in on it, you can actually see Jack holding a light. If we zoom in to 200%.
What a surprise to absolutely no one.
Oh, there it is. You can see his arm. Oh,
and for anyone
you can see his arm holding a light.
Oh, let's see.
And here you can see his feet down here.
Oh, yep. There we go.
So yes, there is a person holding a light, which is Ben at the back. And then in the edit, I removed them in the background.
Fantastic. Great collaboration there. Well done, Ben. Fantastic. We have, I would say, safely 3 minutes. Do we have time for any more tips?
Are there any other questions that people are asking or you have?
Yeah, I mean, I always have questions. What would you say is your number one workflow tip?
Number one workflow tip. So my workflow when it comes to editing photos is start in Lightroom. So I only import the photos I want to edit into Lightroom. This is just my way. It might not be the correct way, but I go through my my hard drive. So I copy all the photos onto my SD card, from my SD card to a hard drive, an SSD, so I can work faster. And then from there, I only import the photos I want to edit into Lightroom. So all these folders here only have photos that I want to edit. And then I color grade in Lightroom. Then I open up in Photoshop if I want to change things or add things or get rid of things or do something crazy with it. Then I save it and then go back to Lightroom and edit it again. So that's sort of my photography workflow.
Fantastic. Oh, we do have, we're going to fit it in because it's a great question from Jam Tuna, shout out. How do you deal with changing light during time lapses, i.e. from afternoon to night? So this is going to be a lightning round answer.
So the best way for me to shoot a day to night time lapse is to shoot it on aperture priority. So you lock your ISO. Usually I set it to about 400 to 800. You lock it. Then you lock your aperture as well, so those two would never change. So then your shutter speed will change by itself. So the darker it gets, the longer the shutter speed will go. And so it should adjust to the lighting accordingly.
Fantastic. Such a succinct answer as well. That does bring us to time. Thank you everyone for tuning in with us.
Also, you want to shoot in manual focus. That's very
manual
important.
Focus.
Yes. So that the focus doesn't change when it gets too bright or too dark. You have to...
yes, of course.
Yeah, so that's a very important one as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in for both part 1 and 2. If you missed part 1 or want to rewatch this one again, you can do so on our YouTube page, which is linked in the description of this stream. Demas, thank you so much. Where can people find more of your work outside of the stream?
Thank you for having me as well. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. Instagram, TikTok is just @Demas, and YouTube you can search my full name, Demas Rusli.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once again. I hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you back on the stream again soon.
Yeah, hopefully you can jump back on and teach you guys more things.
Sounds great. See you, everyone.
Bye.